Thank you for subscribing to Dharma Talk from One Mind Dharma. To learn more about the podcast and different ways to subscribe, you can visit omdharma.com/talk and visit us on the web at oneminddharma.com. We have a meditation center in Northern California, daily guided meditations, free daily inspirational emails, and much more. Many of the things that we offer on One Mind Dharma are offered on a donation basis and are supported by the generous contributions from our community. If you want to support One Mind Dharma or learn how you can do so, visit omdharma.com/help. So today there's no Elizabeth, just me. As you may have noticed, we've been gone and off for a few months while trying to figure out a little bit what to do with the podcast. Elizabeth right now is on a trip with her mom in Patagonia. And we've decided to keep the podcast kind of going as it has been, but also to offer maybe some more content in the form of our blogs. So today we're going to talk about some of the benefits of meditation practice and really what this looks like. You can read the post that we're talking about at omdharma.com/benefits. And before we jump in, we actually, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about first just kind of the limitations on research around meditation and mindfulness. There has been a ton of research recently, and sometimes they claim quite ridiculous things. Sometimes we see articles on social media that say, oh, mindfulness can this or that, and you read the article and read the actual study, and that's not at all what it says. But there are a few important things to mention before diving into some of these research findings. First, we're going to go through a bunch of ways in which meditation has been found to be beneficial, perhaps, but there have also been many studies that have found that mindfulness or meditation doesn't have the benefits that they were looking for. There have been null findings. We actually wrote about one of these on our blog. I think it's omdharma.com/study, in which mindfulness was looked at in teens and young adults and actually found pretty much no benefits where they thought they would be. So there is a ton of research also to suggest that it may not be as beneficial in the ways that we think it is. For every piece of research finding mindfulness to be beneficial, there are other pieces finding that it may not be as useful as we think. There are even counter findings where some research studies have found that mindfulness meditation can hinder our progress or growth towards happiness. One example of this is research done with people experiencing trauma. There are many people that sit in meditation and experience some level of trauma, and it kind of becomes activated or triggered in that silence. One of the pieces that interests me most is that when you read a research study, they're talking about mindfulness meditation, but they don't always say exactly what that is. Often they're doing a breath kind of concentration practice. Some studies actually will say that they're doing a body scan. With compassion, they're talking about compassion meditation when really what they're often doing is a metta or loving kindness practice. So there's these systematic definitions that we haven't really come to some uniform consensus on and what these mean. So that's a big problem with the research being done. Finally, like many forms of psychology and much scientific research, it's really in its infancy. All of this mindfulness research is relatively new. And what happens with any new field kind of historically is there's a lot of findings and we begin weeding out what is true, what we can replicate, what is useful, and what kind of the implications are. So many of these studies that are being done right now have found really amazing things, but they may just serve as kind of jumping off points in the future more than anything. So with all of that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump into it. First, meditation can reduce pain. This has been replicated time and time again. The study that we cited was in 2016, and it was with people practicing mindfulness meditation. And it was really interesting because they actually gave people the drug naloxone, which blocks the opioid receptors, and found that meditation reduced pain even with the opioid receptors blocked. So, unlike many other forms of pain management, meditation does not affect the opioid receptors. Two, mindfulness can lower blood pressure. This may not come as a surprise for those of you that practice. Uh, there have been multiple studies that have found this either on purpose or kind of as a byproduct. We cite one in 2013 where the researchers actually followed the study participants for a few years and found that mindfulness practice had actually helped lower the blood pressure for an extended period of time. With that, number three, it can lower heart rate, which of course has an effect on blood pressure. The lowered heart rate, and we'll talk about this in the future in a little bit. The lowered heart rate can, of course, decrease anxiety. And as you probably know, heart disease is a huge issue in the world and can help us in many ways. Four, one of the older studies has found, it was one of the kind of first big studies on mindfulness, found that a guided imagery practice, so not really mindfulness meditation, but a meditation practice, actually helped improve stress and healing after surgical operations. There are many different theories as to why this may be, and this kind of points towards, the research being a jumping off point. But some of the researchers suggested that mindfulness can help, or meditation rather, can help ease anxiety and lessening the stress response of the body. Five, meditation's an anti-inflammatory. There's so much talk about anti-inflammatories these days, whether it's the actual medication or foods that cause inflammation, gluten, all of these different things. There have been multiple studies, one at University of Wisconsin-Madison, which found that it actually can help alter the genes in your cellular structure and reduce inflammation in the body. Six, it helps you to digest your food. This has been researched time and time again and is probably one of the more accepted pieces of research. They've looked often at irritable bowel syndrome or kind of food sensitivities. Lactose intolerance is another one they've looked at. And there was actually a study published in the journal Inflammatory Bowel Disease that found that people who engaged in a mindfulness based intervention showed an increased effectiveness of digestion, less anxiety related to their condition, and an overall increase in quality of life. This was just an 8-week mindfulness course. This is often how these studies are done. And the benefits were observed 6 months later in study participants. So that's not forever by any means, but to think that an 8-week mindfulness course can have those effects 6 months after the course finished is really powerful. Seven, your immune system strengthens. So this is kind of a weird one and perhaps surprising. A 2003 study in the journal Psychosomatic Medicine put people in a similar 8-week mindfulness meditation intervention course and found that the individuals had increased immune function compared to the control group, helping them stay healthy and stay away from being sick. So here in the winter time, you should get your meditation in, stay away from the flus and the colds going around. Eight, meditation can help prevent and treat symptoms of asthma. There was a study actually pretty recently in August of just this last year, and it was a meta analysis, not a study, meaning they really looked at a bunch of different studies, weeded through them, and found significant evidence to just suggest that meditation increases the quality of life in people with asthma, as well as helping relieve symptoms. The study, it is important to note that the researchers did kind of suggest that we need further studies and further research, but it was a really interesting meta-analysis. 9, mindfulness can ease premenstrual and menopausal symptoms. The Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine published a meta-analysis back in 2006. They weren't necessarily looking for anything specific, but they were looking at a bunch of different kind of implications of mindfulness meditation. And one of their biggest ones was that meditation in various forms: meditative prayer, mindfulness practice, movement practices like yoga, improved symptoms of premenstrual syndrome and menopause, uh, and really kind of helped people improve their quality of life, and also this similar kind of decrease in anxiety or stress around the symptoms. So those are some physical benefits. Those are 9 of them. Of course, there are more that we may find in our lives. Next, we'll jump into some of the psychological benefits. So 10, meditation helps you sleep better. And we've talked about this before on our podcast. We've talked about it on our blog. I've used meditation to help me sleep. Harvard Health reports that mindfulness meditation can help fight insomnia. And multiple studies have found that meditation can help you fall asleep and stay asleep. The interesting thing here is this is not just meditation practice while in bed trying to go to sleep, but meditation in the morning can actually help you get your sleep, in the same way that exercising during the day can help you sleep better. 11, it reduces anxiety and stress. Well, that was what the Buddha taught, so that's good that we found that mindfulness and meditation can help us reduce dukkha or stress. So there have been multiple studies that have investigated this, of course. Some of them have been in people with anxiety disorders or without them. Some have been in people struggling with addiction. But what they found is that mindfulness practice, especially when carried forth over one of these 8-week courses, can significantly decrease the amount of stress and anxiety a person experiences. 12, mindfulness can help regulate mood disorders. Now, to be clear with some of these, we're not saying that you should practice meditation or mindfulness instead of seeing a doctor or taking your medication or meeting with the right professionals. It's absolutely not the case. I myself struggle with a mood disorder and know that I have my Western medicine that helps, and I also have my mindfulness practice and can see how that helps. But we can't just disregard our own health and safety. Anyways, 12, mindfulness helps regulate mood disorders. In some of the same studies that have looked at anxiety, one of them was Hoffman et al., they found a decrease in depression and less symptoms of mood disturbances. This is interesting because it's true for those with mood disorders and without mood disorders. So that's people with depression or bipolar disorder and those without diagnoses. That meditation can help regulate mood regardless of your mental state. 13, meditation can reduce symptoms of PTSD. Now, this is an important one because with PTSD, sitting in silence and meditating can actually trigger or activate any trauma. And whether it's, the trauma with a big T or trauma with a small t, which I don't even like to say because I don't really believe that there's not a small trauma. Meditation can be activating. So, my suggestion, if you're new to meditation and do have some form of trauma that you've experienced, to meditate with somebody else present with whom you can trust and be honest and open. Elizabeth wrote a post a while ago and actually made a little video that's really cool. And you can find it on the page omdharma.com/benefits. But it was a study in PTSD symptoms in veterans. Some of the veterans underwent a normal treatment routine for PTSD, while another group just added in a mindfulness practice regularly. The group that integrated mindfulness practice showed less symptoms of PTSD after the study than those who just completed the normal PTSD treatment. 14, meditation improves self-esteem. There have been many studies looking at this, self-esteem and body image. One of my personal favorites is a 2005 study when the researchers looked at self-esteem among women who were experiencing breast cancer. They weren't looking at mindfulness meditation, really. They were looking at Tai Chi, which is a form of meditation, and is a form of mindfulness for that matter, but not a traditional mindfulness meditation. It's interesting, those that participated in the Tai Chi showed significantly more self-esteem than those who interacted with a social support group, which has also been found to boost self-esteem. 15, mindfulness practice can help treat addiction. Again, if you're struggling with addiction, mindfulness meditation may not just cure it. You may need professional help. I know it seems silly to keep having to repeat that, but I just don't want to come off like, oh, mindfulness can cure everything. So, mindfulness is actually really popular these days in many addiction treatment centers. When I went to treatment, we had a meditation group. Uh, a man came in. I'm actually still close with him and taught meditation, and it was super useful, and it's been super useful. I'm a active member of Refuge Recovery, a Buddhist recovery group, and there have been many kind of treatment centers incorporating mindfulness. Sarah Bowen, a researcher at the University of Washington, has found that mindfulness based interventions increase outcomes in those participating in drug treatment programs. So, those who have mindfulness based interventions incorporated into their addiction treatment programs actually have higher rates of recovery and lower rates of relapse. In an interesting interview with UC Berkeley, I think, Bowen said that she believed it was partly due to how pragmatic mindfulness practice is, and that we can both do it anytime and bring it into our daily lives, which I loved. 16, creativity's boosted. So this is kind of different than the route we've been going. Um, but in a 2012 study, they were looking at an open awareness or mindfulness practice, a real kind of Buddhist mindfulness practice, and found that it increased creativity and divergent thinking in study participants. So this isn't just creativity like, being a better artist, but problem solving skills and thinking outside the box and really kind of looking at things with new perspective. 17, mindfulness can increase self awareness. A 2006 study found that mindfulness meditation improves self reference and self awareness. It used EEGs, ERPs, neuroimaging, and I always find that interesting when they're really using kind of um, things that we can observe and look at. So it found that individuals who practice mindfulness experience increased activity and blood flow in their anterior cingulate cortex and dorsolateral prefrontal areas, which results in an increase in self-awareness and self-reference, meaning we can tell where we're at both emotionally, physically, and in relation to others. And finally, in this section, 18, meditation can help reduce anger. If you listen to this podcast regularly or perhaps know me in person, you know that I've dealt with a lot of anger, and it's kind of my go to aversive technique. It hasn't been for many years, so perhaps I should stop saying that and identifying with it. But in my youth, I turned to anger often when I wasn't getting my way, when I was feeling sad. And meditation really has been the main way that I've learned to I wouldn't say cope with it, but adapt and change and work with it. So specifically, this one study looked at the heart practices, compassion and metta, which decrease the stress and immune response in these kind of difficult and unpleasant situations. So this is interesting because it actually suggests that our brain and body respond differently to these difficult situations. And when we practice, we notice this. We get faced with something that is really difficult. We perhaps would have flown off the handle 5 years ago if it happened to us. And today it just it doesn't quite have the same punch it used to. So I just want to pause here before moving into some of the cognitive benefits of meditation and say that if you're listening on YouTube, we would love if you would subscribe, like, comment. If you're listening on a podcast, to go ahead and leave a comment or a review. We appreciate any support you have to offer, as this is what we do for a living. We love what we do, and we thrive off the support of our community. So any little actions of support you have to offer, we greatly appreciate it. You can always head over to our YouTube channel at oneminddharma.com/YouTube. We'll take you right there, and click subscribe or share it or share this video. So with that, let's get back into this. Ooh, cognitive benefits of meditation. So we just kind of separated this out because it's a little bit different than psychological benefits. 19, meditation improves working memory. In a 2013 study, they investigated the relationship between mindfulness and working memory. So they were taking just a 2-week meditation course and then taking tests to measure focus, working memory. And they found that individuals who participated in the mindfulness meditation course had a significant increase in working memory than those compared with those in the control group. So 20, it increases focus, which again, same study found that meditation can increase focus. I like when the research study really kind of outlines what they were looking at and what was going on. With the focus piece, the researchers were looking at the presence of thoughts not related to the task at hand during a test. So the participants were taking a test and kind of noting when a thought was present that was not related to the test. They found that the individuals who went through the mindfulness course had much fewer non-task related thoughts. And there have been many studies to look at this, but I just thought that was an interesting way to look at focus. 21, mindfulness helps you work better under stress. And we already talked about stress and anxiety. And this kind of ties into the anger thing and how things phase us. Catherine McLean led a study at UC Davis, University of California, Davis. And it looked at a bunch of different things and had many interesting findings. But one of them was they looked at individuals kind of working on not objectively, what I would consider boring tasks. So kind of menial tasks and tasks that had really close deadlines. The people who engaged in the mindfulness practice, which I think was 20 minutes a day with this study, were able to work more efficiently, focus better, and work with less stress than the control group with these kind of menial tasks and with the deadline. 22, meditation improves your ability to solve problems. That may not be phrased right. Meditation may improve your ability to solve problems. And this kind of goes back to the creativity piece. This is an old study, not old, but relatively old for the field. And it was 1982, published in the Journal of Memory and Cognition. And it found that meditation increased verbal problem solving. And it was looking at transcendental meditation, TM, which is kind of a type of concentration meditation and related. And it found that the meditation practice was effective in helping individuals develop verbal problem solving, which is the ability to speak and question in a way that helped solve problems and work towards something. 23, mindfulness may improve decision making. So they were looking at individuals struggling with addiction, actually, and found that those who underwent mindfulness-based therapies displayed better judgment and decision making. This also ties in with executive functions and the activity in the prefrontal cortex. And what it does is it kind of a meditation in this study allowed the individuals to think more clearly through the situation. 24, meditation can help you learn new things. There have been many studies, and we cite some on the page, that have found that mindfulness practice can increase people's ability to learn new things. So actually pick up new information. And these are the parts of the brain associated with memory, learning, and problem solving, and really help us to absorb new information and make use of it in the future. 25, mindfulness helps visuospatial processing. I might need help pronouncing that. I definitely need help pronouncing that. So a researcher at the Wake Forest School of Medicine looked at mindfulness practice and its relationship with visuospatial learning, and they found that it significantly increased memory and processing. So this is what is responsible for our ability to remember things by sight, to recognize objects and events, and to process information at the eyes. So the simple things like recognizing someone's face or solving a puzzle of some sort, and really kind of pick up and retain information. We're almost there. On to the last section, social benefits of meditation. 26, mindfulness decreases feelings of loneliness. This was a really interesting one in my opinion because Well, I'll talk about it. It was a 2012 study, and it found that meditation practice, even when we're doing it alone, not with a sangha or community, decreases feeling of loneliness. This includes, and this is where I thought it was interesting, it included the feeling of loneliness that we experience whether we're alone or with people. And we've all had that experience of being in a crowd of people or at a party or whatever and feeling lonely. And meditation actually helped with that. 27, compassion practice helps us actually be more compassionate. Elizabeth wrote about this a couple years ago in a post on the blog. I think we linked to it on the omdharma.com/benefits page. But researchers had people practice compassion and metta meditation and found that those people who were practicing were actually more likely to act upon their compassion. What they did was they offered kind of unrelated ability to donate to a charity. And what they found was that people who meditated and practiced these compassion and metta practices were more likely to donate significantly. So that doesn't mean meditation is going to make you poor because you're going to give all your money away necessarily. But it does mean that compassion may, like these practices, may actually help us translate to the real world. And that's something I always like to see. 28, metta reduces social isolation. So this is I'm an isolator type, like when I'm not feeling well or tired or sad or just stressed, I isolate. I know other people who tend to want to go out and be with friends and be with people and kind of recharge that way. And actually, after writing this piece and kind of doing the research for it, I started doing some more metta practice just to investigate my experience with it. But what happened was they had people doing loving kindness meditation and found that it significantly helped increase positive social emotions and decrease the tendency towards social isolation. And finally, loving kindness, 29, loving kindness can help create positive relationships. So, in addition to decreasing the negative social emotions, it can actually help us to create positive relationships. One piece of research found that metta increased empathy and allowed people to connect more deeply with others. And this was done with just a few minutes of practice a day, which I always like to see as well, that even the few minutes of practice can be hugely beneficial. So that's that 29 benefits of meditation practice. I know some of them were phrased like this is a benefit of like it increases creativity. And I think that the more appropriate term, maybe it may increase, or there's research to suggest it may increase, because it's not that black and white. The last thing I want to offer on this subject is we've posted this. It's gotten a lot of kind of traction and shares on social media, and a lot of people reading it, and we've gotten a lot of emails about it. And one of the most common questions we get is, who cares? Why did you write this? Why did you post this? Why are we talking about this? And I actually think it's a really good question. People aren't saying it, in a mean way, I don't think, and maybe they are, but I don't take it that way. They just want to know why this matters. And I think for me, the reason that we wrote this post and Elizabeth and I wrote it together was there are a lot of people who are interested in mindfulness or meditation, but don't have a deep faith in it. And it's kind of this little catch 22 that in order to have the deep faith in it, you need to actually practice. Well, what's going to push you to practice? Some sort of blind faith or some sort of hope? Or, for me, it was I saw people around me practicing and I liked them and they seemed like good people. And that kind of I wanted what they had. But that was why we wrote this, is you can see these 29 benefits of meditation. They're not 29 different studies. I think there's 26 different studies cited in the piece. Can help give you some faith that there maybe is something to this meditation thing, that it's not just a silly fad that's going away. I also think it's important to note that a lot of these studies are looking at mindfulness practice or Tai Chi or compassion meditation and not truly incorporating, the rest of the Buddha's teachings or Buddhism or the ethics portion. How do we act in daily life and how do we behave in relation to others in the world around us? So that could be something to investigate for yourself as well, is Can you take these practices and add on that kind of ethical portion and see where it benefits you? So thank you for listening to Dharma Talk. I think next week Elizabeth will be back on, depending on when I decide to record, frankly. Again, we appreciate any support. You can visit omdharma.com/help to support us. Even $1 a month greatly helps us. It adds up. If you're listening on YouTube, please subscribe, like, comment, share. If you're listening on a iTunes or Stitcher or whatever podcast kind of app, then please leave a review or share it. And if you're listening on email, then you're off the hook, or you can forward the email. So with that, I thank you. I wish you all a happy new year. And as always, you're welcome to email us at matthew@oneminddharma.com and elizabeth@oneminddharma.com. We're happy to answer any questions. If you have a topic you want us to cover, or just looking for some guidance, or want to tell us, some feedback, we're happy to take that as well. So with that, we thank you, and we'll see you next week.